favor, Harvey in favor, and Settle in favor. Dr. Harrison, how do you vote? In favor. Okay, that would make it another unanimous.
Before I turn the floor back to our new chair, I want to say congratulations, and we are so lucky to have the leadership of both of you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. This is going to be an awesome year for all of us and the community.
I agree. You know, I know Arlene's going to have a few words, but I do want to thank Danielle for serving as vice chair since the beginning of the PAB. She put a lot of time and energy and effort, her and Shawnee, into helping us get to where we are right now. And I know she has a lot going on in her life, and finding that work-life balance is not easy, as we all know. And I appreciate Danielle being able to put that time in as our vice chair for so long, and wishing her continued success with helping us, obviously, as a board member and her other endeavors that she might have a tiny bit more time for. But just thank you, Danielle. You were there from the beginning, and just thank you for your work. And Arlene, if you want to say anything also.
Yes, it's been definitely a pleasure working and watching Danielle grow. And I tell her all the time, when I grow up, I want to be so much like you, because she definitely is a go-getter. And for all of the board members, we're here to serve the community, and we have a lot of work that we're willing to put our shoulders to the wheel and get it done. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Harvey.
Can I say just a few words, just briefly?
Yep, please.
I want to thank you both, and Arlene, Board Member Brown, I know you're going to do an awesome job, and Larry, you're going to continue to do an awesome job that you're doing. I do just want to make one correction. Dr. McIntosh did come before me, so a lot of what I did take a look at what she was doing, so I do want to give credit where credit is due. Shawnee was an amazing chair, and she helped a lot. But Dr. McIntosh, she did a wonderful job when she was in her seat as well. So I just want to thank everyone that came before me and kind of helped me show the ropes. And I'm very, very, very happy to pass this over to Arlene. It is a lot of things going on in my life right now, and you guys have been super supportive. So I just want to thank you guys. And, you know, I'm still here as a board member, so let's continue to serve the community and get this stuff done.
Thank you. All right, so we have to do some catch-up work. I think hopefully everybody did their assignments and went through the minutes that Marina had put together and got to us a couple weeks ago. And I know I emailed them out earlier in the week again also. So if we can start, and obviously I won't be able to vote on many of these because I wasn't there as a board meeting, as a board member. So once they come in after I got appointed, I will take part. And obviously, if you weren't at the meeting that we're going over, you know, you need to be present to be able to approve them. But if Marina, if you can start us off, maybe either in order of the earliest meeting, and I'm assuming everybody had a chance to read through. Let us know if you didn't, but we do need to, you know, have majority votes on these. That are eligible for the board meeting minutes, and going forward we'll start doing this process and we don't have to catch up on past ones like we are doing right now. So before we get through the minutes, if people have a chance to read through the minutes that Marina had sent out a couple weeks ago, and then I sent out again earlier in the week.
We have a hand from board member Harrison and board member Harvey, if you want to entertain those first.
Yep. Did you see who was first? I didn't see who was first.
Harrison, then Harvey.
Okay.
I don't know when there's an appropriate time to bring this up, but there should be, as a part of the agenda, a report of correspondence received by the board. And the reason that I feel that this is awkward is because I'm aware of correspondence from the PABA expressing concern about what we just did, and asking us to delay the vote for chairperson until their two appointments could be made
I was going to bring that up in my chair's report.
I'm also, well, okay, well, correspondence is something that I didn't see on the agenda.
Well, for that particular question, that was something I was going to bring up. I've talked to the Alliance also. I've had conversations about their concerns, which I was going to bring up in my chair's report.
It's not just that particular question.
It's just in general.
We have correspondence from lawyers professing to represent Connor. We have a letter directed to us that we've not responded to on that. And I'm also aware of an email from someone purporting to be a member of the staff expressing some concerns. We have not discussed or reported on that either.
Yeah. Well, I guess when we get to other business, there's other items that you feel we haven't discussed in the meeting. We could bring those up as other items. I mean,
I'm saying correspondence.
No, I understand.
It should be a rule that any correspondence that we receive should be reported, not just not a selection.
No, I understand. I mean, I think going forward, you want to make at a future meeting that we add that as an agenda item to discuss adding a correspondence part. We can discuss that. I think considering the nature of our work, every piece of correspondence that we get isn't something that we want to discuss or would be discussed publicly. We kind of have to decide what is appropriate and what isn't, and have that discussion. Like I've obviously things from the Alliance, they would want us to discuss, we should discuss. But and I would discuss the item that you mentioned. But every other item that we get, some have been responded to in other ways, and some just are things that we wouldn't necessarily be bringing up in a public meeting because they're might be related directly to an investigation with something that's not public yet. So maybe going forward, figuring out what's appropriate for public discussion and what isn't from correspondence.
We're not supposed to have non-public discussions.
Well, if there's let's say we get correspondence from somebody with an accusation in regards to an investigation that we're having. Obviously, we wouldn't discuss that publicly. We have to go through our process of internally letting the staff do its job, and maybe publicly we would discuss it at some point. So every piece of correspondence directed to the board isn't necessarily going to be public right away. But we can talk about what is public and what isn't. Maybe that means going to executive session to discuss something, other things that we decide are public. I'm more than willing to work with you to figure out, what we consider public and what is something that isn't that we can discuss, and something that isn't just considered public right away, if it can become public eventually, what that process is. But I mean, as of today, we don't have that set up. But the particular concern from the Alliance, I'm more than willing to discuss, and anything having to do with the investigation that is going on for our executive director, all that's been referred to the law firm. Any correspondence, they're the ones responding in regards to anything having to do with the investigation. Any correspondence directed to the board would have been forwarded to the law firm for them to respond. Reverend Harvey?
Yes, clearly tonight is a very important night based on our agenda, the parts that we have covered and the parts that we have to cover tonight. And I understand that there will be some voting tonight, and it's a very important night. However, I have to jump off of the Zoom tonight because I have an emergency situation that I have to take care of. So I don't know if my vote can be by proxy with the majority tonight, or my vote just have to be an absent vote or no vote in the time of voting. But it's very necessary that I pull off now to take care of a very emergency situation that I have going on. And for that, I apologize. I
appreciate you giving us a heads up, Dr. Harvey. I hope things work out well. And if you could join us again later, please do. But yeah, take care of the emergency, and we'll update you if anything urgent comes up.
Sure thing. And if there's a need for a vote, and you can call me, text me, and I can jump back in. I'll be willing to jump back in for a vote. I can do that.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Harvey.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right. For the minutes, is everybody comfortable with starting approving the minutes from earlier in the year, starting with whatever is earliest, Marina? before we start, I want to make sure everybody's okay with doing that. It's Rabbi Settle and Dr. Harrison, Matthew, Arlene, Danielle. Okay, because I can't do the first part. Okay, if you just start in order, Marina, with the earliest ones, and then I'll jump on sometime in May.
Okay. Oh boy, I'm just setting up my page here. We have meeting minutes of March 24, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
Excuse me. Did you say March? Because the earliest one listed was May.
No, we got one from March 15th.
Yeah, that's a committee meeting. I just provided them for your reference, but I believe Rabbi Settle has told me before they don't need to be voted on.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, does anyone have any corrections to the minutes?
Well, she's opening up the minutes first, and then that's when we go into.
My point is, if no one has corrections to the minutes, we can approve them en masse.
Okay, well, let me back up then. Yeah. Does anybody have any corrections to any of the minutes that Marina emailed out? We could skip a lot if we.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the entire set of minutes as presented.
Okay, I do want to, Marie, if you could just read through the dates of the meeting minutes, just so they're officially on the record, just in case somebody's watching, wondering what dates we're approving.
There's been no second to my motion.
Yeah, I second your motion, Dr. Harrison. Thank you.
Sure thing. We have the minutes of March 24, 2022, the minutes of April 7, 2022, the minutes of the emergency board meeting on May 18th, 2022, a regular board meeting on May 19, 2022, emergency board meeting on May 24, 2022.
Actually, Maria, can you pause? On the May 24th, we didn't officially close that meeting properly. So I think, what would be the process for us actually ending that meeting properly? It was an executive session meeting, so we just ended it after many hours of, we didn't we came back without actually adjourning the meeting.
The proper.
Yeah. Any suggestion of the proper way to end that meeting?
I would have to look that up and consult with our attorneys.
I mean, is there a way that we could
We can omit that from the motion.
Let's just put a hold on
As the one who presented the motion, I would agree with omitting that minute.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Yeah, and maybe we can get an answer by the end of the meeting. We can just come back and just close that one out. I do want to make sure that we, that was brought up that we hadn't officially closed that one out. Okay, go ahead after the 24th.
After the 24th is the special board meeting of June 2nd, 2022, and then the regular board meeting of June 13, 2022, and then there's one more. It's just on another page. It is the board meeting minutes, regular meeting minutes of June 16, 2022. Ooh, okay.
Also the June, you see the 13th?
Yes, June 13th was the last one in my email. I had to switch over to see the 16th.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the motion by Harrison and a second by Knox. How do we vote?
Call the question.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Okay, I have Harrison, I have Nikoloff, I have Knox, I have Settle, I have Brown, and Member Tucker, how do you vote? Oh, did you not get a chance to read them?
I didn't attend the meeting, so I can't vote on the minutes.
Okay.
In order for you to be able to vote, you have to be in attendance of the meeting that's being voted on.
Gotcha. So I will omit the vote of Chair Knox as well.
Actually, let's back up now and that's a good point. Like me and Danielle, I should just be voting on the ones, approving the ones up until I joined. And then, yeah, so that's a good point. So doing them en masse, if I was, so let's, so can we approve up to the, oh, go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah, I was basically going to say the same thing you said. You probably would have to make it 2 separate motions. So you make it a motion for meetings that was up until that point of Knox joining, and then a separate motion to approve the meetings after he had joined.
I don't know that there's a rule that says that you have to have been at the meeting to approve the minutes.
I think it's the best practice because
that may be a practice, but I don't think it's required. Stop laughing.
Clarify that. Are you saying you don't believe it's a rule to?
I don't think you can find Robert's rules saying that you can only vote on a minute on a meeting that you were present at.
I would like, if we're going to err.
Yeah, I would also say that I wouldn't
err. Let's err on the side of caution. And as Danielle suggested, just do 2. The first one up until Board Member Knox joined. We can vote on those. And then the next motion can be from the time Board Member Knox joined up until now. It's not as if it's costing us anything other than time.
Is that a friendly amendment that you would accept, Dr. Harrison?
Yes, I accept it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that would be, the first motion would be approval of minutes up until from March 15th to April 19th. Because you started on May 13th, correct?
I think my first meeting would have been like, the 13th. That was our first, yep, that was my first meeting.
So that is, yes, what I said, March 15th through April 19th.
All right, all in favor?
I see Nikoloff, I see Harrison, I see Tucker, Settle, and Brown. Motion carries. Okay. And the second vote would be for the minutes of May 18 through June 16. We need someone to make the motion.
Oh, yep, I make the motion.
Second.
Okay. Okay, and how do we vote?
Aye.
I see Knox in favor. I see Nikoloff in favor. Brown in favor. Settle in favor. Okay, motion carries.
All right, thank you for getting those together for us, Marina. All right, on to staff reports. We're going to get an update from our acting manager, Mr. Bosco, and then a discussion with Mr. Higgins regarding the formation of a policy subcommittee, the acting manager, Bosco. How are things going the last couple of weeks since our doors opened?
Things have been interesting. And it's been great to be able to start taking complaints and moving forward. So as by way of updates, our first week of taking complaints, we took in 50 complaints that first week. Our second week, we took in from Monday through Friday, 32 complaints. We did take in some additional ones after that. So we're on a very good pace right now. As it relates to investigating those complaints, we are still running into obstacles dealing with the mayor, the law department, in regards to direct access to the information that we require. We have tried some back channels to negotiate how exactly we can gain access to the information that's required. As of this point, those back channels have failed. So we will continue to move forward with trying to make sure that we have the access necessary and the access that is required by the charter. In that same vein, we have set up for a second meeting with RPD, with our city council representative, as well as President Melendez and the law department for July 25th to continue to try to push this moving forward. As it relates to some of the training from RPD, we received a listing of trainings that were previously available to CRB. We are currently going through that material right now, and I have instructed, I shouldn't say instructed, I've requested with my counterpart at RPD that I've been working with to have a sit down so that we can go through each and every one of the trainings, get additional details in regards to that, so that we can better present it to the board and see exactly which one of the trainings would be beneficial for our team and also for the board to participate in. As it relates to the ride-along, if you haven't done so already, please drop off your waiver forms so that I can present that in person to RPD. Because of the sensitive nature of the information provided on those forms, I don't want it to be emailed or mailed. I want to simply drop it off myself at RPD so that we can schedule the necessary ride-alongs. I will inform the board that our interim case management system is coming along. The investigators will receive a briefing on that system tomorrow. And after that, we will be delineating the cases that came in to the designated investigators so that we can begin those investigations into the cases as best as we can based upon the information that we already have currently. In addition, we have been meeting with City Council regarding everything dealing from hiring freezes to materials that are necessary. And while I can't provide a detailed update in regards to each one of those conversations, I can say that as it pertains to some of the invoices, some of the hiring practices that are necessary in order to continue to solicit and engage the community for the complaints, that those have been lifted. So we can move forward and we have an avenue in which to move forward. In addition to that, we're hammering out some of the update requirements, the bi-monthly update requirements and meeting times that that City Council has suggested in regards to approving and reaching benchmarks of the KPIs. So thus far, we are well ahead of schedule in regards to those KPIs, and we look forward to having that continue. We were briefed yesterday in regards to our main case management system, eyesight, and we still have to work out some information with eyesight to make sure that that's going to be ready on time, so that when we do transition from the interim system to that system, that there won't be a delay or any types of hangups. So I will be working with the case managers in regards to some of the system analysis that are needed. Mike Higgins was also involved with that meeting, and he's pointed out some suggestions as well. So we are moving forward as best as we can in regards to the main case management system with eyesight.
Are we still on pace for August? I think before was that we think we'd be working in August. Is that still a possibility?
The original projection was mid-August to have the eyesight system up and running and to have us transition from our interim system onto the eyesight system. There are some kinks that was identified yesterday and that we're going to try to hammer out to make sure that we can try to keep that same time frame. In the meantime, though, case managers have already been working with the interim system, and the investigators are going to be briefed and brought up to speed on that tomorrow.
We have a hand from Harrison and then Nikoloff.
Go ahead, Reverend Harrison.
Thanks for that information. This first question may be inappropriate. Do you have a racial breakdown of the complaints?
I don't have that in front of me. There are information on the complaints that people can self-identify. So in regards to having the demographics breakdown,
You hung up?
I'm going to say frozen, not hung up, but yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything. While you're frozen, let me go ahead and ask my next question, and that is, I had the impression that the secure VP, Mr. Bosco, I had the impression that the secure system, you called it VPN, had not been installed yet. So, and you talked about distributing complaint information tomorrow. What's the status of your security, your computer security?
Sure. So the secure system, the interim system is very secure. It's the same one that is being utilized by RPD and several other city agencies in regards to housing their data. So that part of it is very secure.
The wireless?
Oh,
Make it
he
frozen.
froze again.
Yeah.
I seem to have that
Is he
effect on some
freezing?
people.
Or is
Yes.
it me?
No, it's not just
No.
you. It's you.
Oh, okay. Because I thought it was me. Sorry.
Dwayne, you might want to turn you froze. Dwayne, you might want to turn your camera off and just try talking because we missed you after Dr. Harrison asked the question.
Okay, I'll apologize. Is that better?
Yeah. At least you're unfrozen.
Okay. All right. I apologize. So after you asked the question regarding the VPN, am I correct to say that nothing was heard after that?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So,
And I especially asked about your wireless connections.
okay. So, and I apologize if I didn't hear all the questions. If I don't answer, please just ask me anything that that I didn't answer. So, as it pertains to the system, the interim system, that is on a secure network that is utilized by RPD and other city agencies. So that system is very secure. As it relates to the VPN and our access and setup to the VPN system, IT was in the building today regarding the connections. They are planning on installing landlines, and tomorrow it should be fully completed in regards to having our VPN set up with the city by tomorrow. That's already a delay because this was scheduled to occur last week, but that was delayed from last week, so it's been brought into this week. But they were in here today, and they're going to be in here tomorrow in regards to having the VPN set up, so that should not be an issue moving forward. Were there any additional questions off of that?
Not off of that, but just unless it's inappropriate in some way, for your next report, could you be prepared to give the breakdown by race too of the complainants?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Nicola?
Interim Director Dwayne, thank you first of all for all your awesome work. Interim Manager, sorry. I really appreciate all that the staff is doing and has done in the last couple of weeks. So kudos to the staff and to your leadership. I know some people may not have been around long enough to hear this kind of continued resistance to the sharing of essential information. Can you comment? I know you can't comment on all the specifics, but what possible reason could the mayor or the law department give for not acting in accord with the legislation that is part of the city charter, and not giving us the information that is legally required to be given so that we can do our work? Like, what are they telling you when you say we need the information so the public can hear like what their mayor and their city law department is saying, why they're not going to follow the law?
Well, I can't get into specifics in regards to that, but what I can say is that the rationale that they have provided has not been supported by any case, any statute, or any other type of legal journal or law journal. They have made their case explicitly without any supporting evidence that any type of legal analysis would have provided. So case, law review, statutes, even commentary or footnotes from judges, they have not provided that to us, and that's something that we are continually looking for and trying to assess the rationale. I'm sure all of you already know that with the case involving the protests, Judge DeRacy, while I haven't had an opportunity to read the entire decision, I did read the article in the Democratic Chronicle, wherein they stated that Judge DeRacy called into question their rationale, indicating that the city makes some incomplete and unsupported arguments. And that's what was quoted in the paper. So for them to be reluctant to provide that rationale seems to be something that is done not just in our case, but in other cases.
I hope the public hears this, that the law that is the law of the city requires this information be shared, and there's not any really good reason for it not being shared. So if you're friends of the mayor or you're a supporter, I would urge you to make your discontent known and tell them to stop breaking the law and go in accord with PAB as needed, so we can actually hear the complaints that they've been pressuring us to start hearing and do good investigations and support our staff. I think this is completely unacceptable, and I think it needs to be said again and again until it gets rectified. There's no question. And in public, we need to say it. This stuff happens all the time where they don't want you to know about it. They just want it to kind of go past, but the law says we need this information. It's not being given to us. So what's holding back the work of the PAB right now is not our amazing staff. It's not our board members. It's the people who are supposed to be our allies and supporters in city government. Thank you.
I want to add on to that just for people, I think this is up on our website, our charter, or the Article 18, which goes into detail, but it says on page 3, the RPD and the city shall provide to the board as requested access to all documents and evidence, including but not limited to RPD personnel files, IA Pro database, all other RPD databases, PSS investigative files, criminal and civil case files, disciplinary hearing records, video and audio recordings from body cameras or other sources, all RPD policies, procedures, and practices, the general manual, and any other documents that pertain to policies, tactics, complaints, or charges against RPD officers and their subsequent investigations and adjudication, or other sources of information deemed appropriate by the board. And again, that started off, as requested, access to all. And I know, Dwayne, if you mentioned before, but there are other PABs that have that direct access. Can you give an example of one other place maybe that does that has that access?
Sure. So my counterpart at RPD provided us with a listing of databases that they utilize. And one of those databases is IA Pro. That's a database that's also utilized in Denver. And our Denver counterpart has direct access to that database. Actually, IA Pro technicians indicate that it's very simple to set up. And if you are concerned in regards to any type of phishing expeditions or looking at information that you should not be looking at, it's as easy as flipping a switch. So if IA Pro technicians state that, and Denver Police Department and our counterpart, their civilian review board, has direct access to it, then there should be no reason for us not to.
Dr. Harrison. Was that from before?
It's no, sir. I just I forgot to mention that I had a conversation with someone the other day that made me aware that we are vulnerable to lawsuits because of if action on a complaint is delayed or somehow or another mishandled because we do not have access to the information that the law says we should have, we're vulnerable to being sued along with counsel and the administrative side of the city.
Yeah, we definitely want to. I mean, for the city and the taxpayers who voted for this to happen, we don't want to put them in a position, and the mayor's office and council shouldn't want to either, of us being delayed in that work and somebody doing a lawsuit. I know me as chair and other board members are going to have continuing conversations with with the mayor's office and city council. I know that President Melendez and others, are on the same page with us, and I understand now that the resistance isn't coming from RPD in regards to that access. It's coming from Corporation Counsel's office. So we're going to endeavor to figure out an answer to that. I mean, the main thing I think, and this I was going to get into this a little bit more in the chair's report, is as the investigative body and as the powers that the public has given us underneath the charter, we don't want to rely on somebody, on an organization that we're investigating, to have access or decide what we can and get access to in regards to doing the investigation. Now, I'm going to say right now, we have a new police chief, we have an administration that I'm not going to assume, I really don't think would try to, do dastardly things every moment, but you never know in the future who's in charge that may purposely try to hide things and may purposely not want to share things, not currently in office or not currently administration, but future administrations. We have to set a standard now that access, no matter who is in charge, even if they're allies or if somebody's in charge one day that doesn't believe in the PAB and doesn't want our work to happen, that they're not able to stonewall investigations and instruct agencies or RPD or anybody else in city government not to give us access to what the charter and what the public expects us to have. So it's part of the reason that we're having this conversation and this disagreement, and that we're going to continue to push that we have the access that the public needs and that we are supposed to have, because we can't assume that we're always going to have somebody supportive there. And besides, the law says it. Access isn't dependent on one person deciding to give you something. It's having that direct access at the same as every other officer has that works for the police department. Anything else? Dwayne, can you talk a little bit about the public outreach work that's been going on from our community affairs department?
Sure. So our public affairs department has come up with a 45-day plan. It's a little bit less than that because it's already been implemented, wherein we identified several different organizations, charity works, that we will be going out to and partnering with in order to provide the public more information in regards to everything from how to fill out a complaint form, what misconduct looks like, and to really introduce them to what the PAB and how they need to be empowered in order to provide the type of community safety that they're looking for. So we have individuals that have been out in the field at some of these locations. We are going to be fortifying them moving forward. Like I previously mentioned, after discussions with City Council, some of the hirings that were held up will start going through specifically in regards to public affairs, so that we can continue to reach out to the community.
Thank you. Again, I encourage anybody in the community that's watching, if you have an event that's going on, you're gonna have more than 3 people there. Please invite us. We'll try to get somebody from our staff, maybe even sometimes a board member, to provide materials about how people can do complaints, can do policy recommendations, and talk about the work of the PAB. So if you belong to a community group, neighborhood association, you like to have some of our materials, or like for us to be present at one of your meetings through Zoom or in person, please reach out, call or email, and we'll make sure that we get somebody there to talk about the work that's going on. Where the doors are open, and we want to be in your neighborhood and at your organization and in your building, talking to people that you feel we should be talking to. Okay, thanks. Thanks. Anything else, Dwayne, that you think we should know about?
Well, I would just move on, not move on, but recommend the subcommittees be voted on, even if they can't be fully staffed right now, but that they are voted on so that we can create the necessary subcommittees to review both policy investigations and the investigations that are deemed worthy of investigation, and those that are lacking the necessary information to move forward, so that
Yep, Dwayne?
He cut out. He's frozen.
Okay. We're going to assume that your face is frozen if you were there. We do have an agenda, a policy discussion that's going to be next with Mike Higgins and talking about the policy committee. Are you back, Dwayne?
I apologize. My internet is going in and out as well. Can you hear me?
Yep. You're not the only one having that problem. He talked the difference, because I know that I think we're going to have a further discussion just with staff next week about the case review committee, but the difference between the panels that will be established to look at cases and the subcommittee, how those connected, or how do you see those as being different or not? The difference between, because I know we're going to have panels once we get cases to kind of decide as a board, based off the panels that are put together. The board, just for the public, we may not know this or may not remember, once there's a decision that has to be made on a case, the investigators will give it to a sub-panel of board members. We have different panels of board members, at least one alliance member in each panel, that will look at different cases. Dwayne probably go in that process a little bit more, but how do you see that being different than the committee that you just talked about outside of the policy one?
Sure. Well, outside of the policy one, when a case comes across and we have to investigate the matter, there's several steps that go along in that function. One, we have to properly identify whether or not there's enough information in order to proceed with an investigation, or if we have to simply hold that and keep that stored until we can gather the necessary information, either through further contact with the reporter or any witnesses that may have been listed, or if it's just an alleged misconduct in regards to a specific officer. So that's the first step, is determining whether or not there is a sufficient information to proceed with an investigation, or if there's a misconduct that is properly alleged. After that, though, once we determine that there's sufficient information to move forward, the board, based upon my understanding, would like to be involved at that level to provide an update as to whether we will be continuing with the investigation or not, which is separate and apart from once the investigation has been completed and a report has been made and submitted to the board, then the evaluation as to whether or not to approve a finding of substantiation or to deny the findings that have come before the board. So you're talking about approval or denial at the close of the investigation, but an update as to cases that have been coming in.
Okay, Arlene and then Dr. Bob. Questions?
Dwayne, thank you so very much. My question is, what is the timeline or time frame? Someone from the community puts in a report, it's investigated. Is there a time frame or limit from the time the initial complaint comes in before the board gets it? Does everything have to be wrapped up or close to particular stages at a particular time?
Okay, so if I'm hearing correctly, as far as the time frame before the board is aware of the case, initially, is that?
Yeah, that's one of them. Yes.
Okay, so the case will come in. The necessary information will be gathered from the reporter. From there, that information is sent to myself or to Mike, depending on whether or not it's a specific case or whether or not it covers any type of policy issues. After that, we review the case. We review it with, in my situation, review it with the deputy chief prior to disseminating it so that the investigators can gather the necessary information and then present it to the board in regards to just having the necessary information to make a determination as to whether or not we should be moving forward with an investigation on that matter. After that, okay, go ahead.
Okay, there's no particular time. So in order for an officer to be disciplined for an egregious behavior, is there a time frame from the time the incident is reported to the time he or she is disciplined? Is it so many weeks, so many months?
Well, it's not a time from when the report is made to when someone is disciplined. The time frame as far as being able to report an incident and it having any type of administration limitation on it to investigate is 18 months. What we're looking for is to have investigations. We have a goal of 3 months in order to investigate a matter. That may stray, and I believe that's also covered in the book, depending on circumstances, may stray up to 5 months, but that's the goal of what we're looking to investigate. But administrative-wise, it's 18 months in order to report any type of misconduct, and that date starts running from the date of the misconduct, not from the date of the investigation or the date of the report.
All right, thank you so very much. And with that being said, I'm glad that we have an opportunity to let the community know that if there are any incidents or possible incidents, that they must take it directly to your staff, either online or on the phone. However, they cannot, if they're friends of ours, somebody we know, bypass any part of the process to think that we can help speed things along or give them any kind of advice. Because what will happen is once the case is taken and the investigation is done, any board member that has been contacted with prior information would probably have to recuse themselves because they're not being fair. So I just want the public to know, please do due process. Don't try and cut corners and ask us questions, because we won't be able to help you until after everything is put before us. And we don't want you to miss out.
Thanks, Arlene. Dr. Harrison.
It just strikes me, Dwayne, that a flow chart would be very helpful in visualizing what you're talking about in terms of how this management system is going to work.
We actually do have one, and I can subsequent my report and send that to the board.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Harrison. Yeah, that flow chart. Any other written materials that you think will be helpful for the board? Yeah, please do share those, including the flow chart. Any other questions for Dwayne? All right. I think, Dwayne, if you want to stick around, that might be a good idea, because I feel other things may come up, especially in my report. But Mr. Higgins, if you could update us on the policy committee, and then I know we're going to have a discussion about setting up a side potential subcommittee for helping direct the policy work. And Danielle put in the chat, thank you, Dwayne. Her internet's also bad, but yeah, thank you, Dwayne, for that report.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Higgins.
Okay, thank you. With your indulgence, I'll stay off camera. I'm also having internet issues. I'm really here today to continue our discussion from our last meeting, where we talked about how the board was going to direct the Policy and Oversight Division and make the decision at the outset of all of our policy, our proposals for change, or our oversight investigations. And I think we sort of discussed different models, but to me, the best model that affects what you all expressed to me in the last meeting would be for you to form a subcommittee. That subcommittee can meet deliberate and decide what they want to do, and then you can refer that decision to the full board for a vote. That protects, well, that's just the preferred, I think that's the model that best effectuates your wishes. And so I would recommend that you vote on that. But if you have questions or want to discuss it further, I'm here to do that.
All right, any ideas about Rabbi Settle?
I guess I had a different model in mind, which was that certainly we could have a subcommittee that sort of fields stuff along the way. But I think that in terms of the board sort of setting the priorities, I would love to have a work session where basically, I think we asked for this, like that we have a list of everything you've thought about looking into. We can suggest what we think should be looked into. We either maybe, you know, if there are things, often I've discovered working groups like this that sometimes there are things that can be sort of put together in categories, right? So we can sort of look at what those main categories are, and then we prioritize them as a board. So that would be my recommendation for how we go about doing this, rather than having the committee make that decision. I think the board as a whole. And it might take a little time too, because I think there's some philosophical conversations to be had in this. I think there's some practical things, you know, and I'd love to see that as a process with your team and the board working together on this. And maybe even have, you know, someone else facilitate it or something too, but really have, you know. Anyway, so that was my thinking about that.
So you think like the work session, like having that within like the next month or two, like doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and make it an annual or semi-annual kind of thing, right? Because we're going to keep needing to do this. Yeah.
And the subcommittee will kind of continue the work that comes out of that work session. Okay. Dr. Harrison.
Well, two things. I kind of like the subcommittee idea only in the following way. I think that it would be nice to stay in touch with the policy group almost on a weekly basis, because there's that much to be done. The second thing that I want to mention is that it has occurred to me that the ranking of the priority ranking of issues that we might think of as an almost intellectual exercise may be different from the ranking that someone in one of Rochester's less well-endowed neighborhoods might rank things. And so I would think that however we just prioritize the subjects that we want to work on, or we'd like the policy division to work on, I'd like there to be input from the community, and I think the easiest way to do that is to go to the barbershops and beauty parlors and ask them.
I mean, I like the idea as, you know, maybe something that comes out of that work session is a way to get, and something we can work with the community outreach group with that department of, you know, there being some synergy, some kind of comparing some of that work, putting some of that work together. Is that Matthew? Yep.
Yeah, good. I mean, I think, yeah, you know, there's also mosques and bodegas and other communities we'd want to go in and talk to as well in the community. So I think making sure we go all over the community, as Dr. Bob was saying. I also believe that I think we could do a combination of the two ideas, where I think it's important for the board to be doing this kind of rigorous work in a working group, and then have a committee, as Dr. Harrison is suggesting, to kind of be in touch and to bring some of that back to the board. Again, whatever helps policy start working, because I know they're jumping at the bit to do that, but I think there's merit in both ideas, so why not splice them, you know? Yeah, that's what I would say.
So I agree. I think both, if you want to do the work session, I still think that the subcommittee is necessary. in part to respond to complaints that we receive where we are requested to conduct a particular oversight investigation or particular proposal for change. And so we have to respond to those, we have to respond to those timely, and we need to be able to deliberate about them in an appropriate way. And so for that reason, I'd recommend that you create the subcommittee, and I'm happy to and would love to participate also in work sessions. And just to be clear, the Policy and Oversight Division is working. We are working hard and developing output, but we are waiting to formalize this process with you all to move forward even further.
And I'm remiss, so after we end this discussion, Mike, I do want to go back and get what you guys have thought about the new protest policies that RPD just put out. Probably should have started with that before we got to this discussion, but after we finish this, I do want to get, I know you guys haven't had a chance to go through everything yet, but your initial thoughts on that. If we can go back to this discussion. Go ahead. Reverend Arlene or Danielle, any thoughts?
I'm good on my end.
I will say, I do like the idea of doing this subcommittee, but maybe the first thing is just having that work session with the subcommittee members being actively engaged. That goes back to something in my chair's report, though. As we're picking who's going to serve on that policy committee, that we're down 2 board members. So I don't want to necessarily fill up that, and then maybe one of our newer board members wants to join in. Obviously, we can't have a majority on a committee just so they can do the work. So just being cognizant of that, as we pick this committee, we're also not fully staffed up or boarded up. That's even the correct term, boarded up. Fully have all of our seats filled in the board, which I'll talk a bit about in the chair's report. But I guess if there's so you had brought this up initially. Do you want to do a proposal that we can vote on in regards to establishing committee and working in the work session somehow? How do you feel about us? Because we think we have to vote to at least establish the committee. Yeah. Go ahead. You're muted.
Point of order here. I believe that but the regular procedure is a president appoints a chair of a committee, and then however else the committee comes about, in terms of membership, that you can facilitate, but we do not have to vote to establish committees.
Okay, I thought I've been on boards we've had to do that before, so our chart doesn't. We don't have to. All right. Well, I agree with establishing a policy committee, a subcommittee. Is anybody interested in chairing it? I see Dr. Harrison's hand up. Anybody else interested? All right, Dr. Harrison, I'll follow up with you. Mike, we'll start. We'll work with Dr. Harrison in regards to the policy subcommittee. Anybody else interested, please let me know. But I do want to be cognizant of, as we get our new board members on, that we might want to leave a spot for one of them. So we should get going right away because we don't have all of our board members right now. But I think it'd be good to, especially because those are 2 alliance seats, that as we get new board members on, that we make sure that we leave space if they're interested in serving on that policy committee. But yeah, Dr. Harrison, let's work with Mike and anybody else that's interested in serving on the committee.
I'm going to try to recruit Drawer.
I know she has an interest, but I do want to say that the first thing is I want to get that work session going because I think it's important that we dig into everything that the policy department's already working on and also hearing from the community, and then getting with the community that's watching. We don't just do investigations into this conduct, we're also taking policy recommendations, and this is something that we want this work group to hear about and us going forward as a subcommittee. So make sure that you do think of sharing that and thinking of those ideas. And if you're not sure if it's a policy idea that fits the work of the PAB or the RPD, if it's public safety, think about it and pass it on. We'll help develop it, or maybe come back to you with a version of something that might be a better question to ask. But please, all ideas and thoughts, especially as we kind of formalize this process of getting input, we want to make sure it happens. But yeah, getting that work session going and then getting that committee subcommittee engaged afterwards. I think it's somewhere to go. So Dr. Bob, I'll work with you on that, and Michael, anybody else that's interested. Any other questions before we move on to the, and we're at 7:43, so we do have a couple more things that are important, but I don't want to keep us here too late. And now that I'm chair, I have to be extra cognizant of that time as opposed to yelling at whoever is chair saying, look at the time. Mike, just any initial thoughts on the policy committee on the revised or the new protest policies RPD announced on the 4th?
Yes, we're pleased to see that they did release their written policy. If you review their policy and the report that the Policy and Oversight Board staff put out about their previously announced policies, you can see that some of the new policies are consistent. There are with our recommendations. For example, they do have a ban on tear gas. They do have a ban on flashbangs during protests. Other parts are not consistent with some of the things that we recommended or are partially consistent. So, an example of a partially consistent thing is that they seem to have integrated perhaps a tiered approach to protests and have included explicit directions about communication where possible. And they have limited the use of SWAT and had their explicitly had their staging in a separate location. So that's sort of a partially consistent, and other things are inconsistent. So we're also looking forward to continuing to watch this issue to see how it's actually implemented through training. We heard back when they announced these policies that they had already been implemented, and then in this announcement, we heard that they are being implemented through training. So interested to see how they're actually implemented and followed, and whether these policies are effective for future protests. So we'll keep looking at that issue, and consistent with the board's direction, we will be happy to do more investigation, do more writing about those policies.
All right, thank you, Michael. Any other questions for Michael before we move on to the chair's report? And I forgot to thank Alana for doing interpreting for us tonight at the beginning. So thank you, Alana, for helping us with interpreting. All right, so on to my chair's report. I wrote some notes. Don't worry, they're not too long. One thing, again, thank you everybody for the support for chair, and I'm looking forward to continuing the good work that's happened already. Another big and new announcement in the city today, we have a new police chief. Full-time, are no longer interim, but Chief Smith has, as I think everybody probably watching this already knows, got picked by Mayor Evans to be the full-time chief. So I want to give our congratulations to him. Dwayne and many of us on the board know about Chief Smith, and we've been working ups and downs with the police department, getting to where we need to be. But I think right now, especially in regards to the access, they've given us what we've asked for, and the holdup is somewhere else right now. But looking forward to working closely with Chief Smith and as he fills out his team going forward. I saw there's a new hire for that was announced by the Mayor, Keith Stith, for as Deputy Chief of Community Engagement. So I'd also like to welcome him to Rochester. He's a retired Chief Detective from New Jersey, and another addition to the police department and doing community engagement work that is also very important. And hopefully we'll be able to work together to help, as the PAB's goal is, to make that experience in the criminal justice system and in regards to public safety better for everybody in our community than it is and has been in the past. And we want to, and our intention is, and we hope we'll be able to work with Chief Smith and Chief Stith. That's going to be interesting saying that a lot to people. Smith and Stith, we're working with both of them going forward, and I'm hoping that can be a good experience and helpful, and that's what the community is expecting. I think that's what the mayor talked about today, and that's what we want to be a part of making our relationship to the point of where we can be productive and move the community closer to what their goals were when they voted for the PAB. And we need a good relationship with RPD for that to happen in regards to the information that we need access to and relationships that we'll be building. One thing also about what we need and what we don't have is a full board. So we have, there are, everybody here is on the board in a spot. We have spots filled, but we have 2 spots that are open. Obviously, our chair resigned last month, which is a relatively new opening, one of our alliance seats. We also have had an opening that's been open for more than 60 days, Dr. McIntosh's seat, and that seat has not been filled, and that's a real disappointment. One thing I know that we've all put a lot of time and effort into, staff doing this full time, us as board members doing this almost full time and sometimes full time, is putting our work and time and effort into doing this. And I think when we all joined the board, we weren't sure of our expectations of what we'd be doing and how much time it would take. But at the very least, we thought we'd be doing it with, a full board, with 9 members of the community that would be sharing that work and sharing in that outreach and sharing and us supporting each other as we do the work of the PAB. Board members leave, board members come on. Sometimes you're not always fully at a full board, but when there's an opening, there is a process to fill it. And underneath the law, when the PAB was set up, if there is a vacancy on the board, it's supposed to be filled by City Council within 60 days. And there was a vacancy for my spot that I filled that was within the 60 days when Commissioner Perez resigned, but the other spot for Dr. McIntosh has not been filled, and maybe you couldn't do them both right at the same time, but it's been more than 60 days for that spot, and that is on council that they should have, and there were names presented to them. There were interviews that were done. I know from conversations with President Melendez that there is a recommendation for a spot, and he's encouraged his fellow council members to help support that, and that hasn't happened yet. So I would say majority of council is not there yet in filling that seat, and that's not acceptable for us as a board. We are very clear and following what we need to do underneath the guidelines in the law, and we want to be clear that we want to hold ourselves to that standard. I know council is definitely holding us to that standard, but I know the community is also going to hold council to that standard of if there's a vacancy, it's supposed to be filled within 60 days. The Alliance did their part in getting the names in to the council, and that spot has not been filled. As for Shawnee's spot, it hasn't been 60 days yet, but I know the Alliance is in the midst of getting names together for them, and once those are given to council for the interviews, again, we would expect that to be filled hopefully by the end of the month, but definitely within the 60-day time period. Hopefully quicker, because as now everybody knows the doors are open, we're doing the work, we're going to be expanding, but I want everybody on this board to be able to have their proper work-life balance to do this work and still be able to take care of their families, their day jobs, their other activities that they're engaged in, and fully be there for the PAB as needed. But it's hard to do that if we don't have everybody on the board that needs to be there. So in regards to the seat that's past the 60 days, I would like to do a letter to council tomorrow. And let me back up a bit, back to what Dr. Harrison has said about concerns. I'm sure many of us have got calls and texts and emails. I've got more than a few from many community folks, a lot from the Alliance, upset that or concerned, maybe not always, it's upset and concerned, depending on the fact that we were having a vote and 2 of the Alliance seats are not filled. And we still had our elections and our regular meeting today. And what I've said to them and Mike, I understand that concern is, we have our regularly scheduled meetings underneath the bylaws. The first meeting in July is when you elect our new chair and vice chair. And this is, that first meeting in July. And although council, hasn't done what they need to do within the 60 days, I didn't want to delay us or not us have our regular meeting based on somebody else not doing, what they need to do within the 60 days. We can't be, that's an invitation to chaos, which we didn't want to get engaged in, I think, if we were to hold off doing what we're required to do under the law, because that hasn't happened somewhere else. I think there's a good candidate that's being recommended by President Melendez, and I would we'll do this letter, and then I think board members that can help, we'll do calls to council members to hear what their concerns are, but also strongly engage them and ask community help with this also, for them to schedule a vote next week so we can have more than have our board almost filled, and then shortly thereafter get the other seat filled also for Shawnee's seat. But the main thing right now is we really need that seat filled. It's unacceptable that's gone past the 60 days. There is a candidate that that is recommended, and that vote needs to happen so we can fully do our duties. Council I think rightfully so, in the last budget expanded the support that they have to do the work they need, which was needed, I think. But here as a board, having our 9 spots filled is the work that also needs to happen so we can continue to do our work that we're doing. Commissioner Brown.
Yes, it saddens me, and it's pretty disheartening because the council some members on the council were very, very concerned about when are you going to start cases, when are you going to take them, when are you going to open up, what. And we are at the point that they've asked us to be. And yet they have chosen not to give us the physical support that we need. And I'm really, really shocked that it has taken so long. They can no longer point the finger at us, because when you point the finger forward, the other 4 come back to you. And I would really love to see the mayor and the council do the next step in due diligence. On the other note or mention that we went ahead and did the vote for vice chair and chair in spite of the Alliance's concern about not having 2 additional people on the board. And as I've said over and over again, that we're laying the track and building the train. However we start out, we're setting the precedent for board members who are coming behind us. We have to do this thing as close to perfect as possible. We empathize and we understand, but the work still must be done in a timely fashion, because if we start changing things in the beginning, that will open Pandora's box for board members who are coming along behind us. And we cannot afford to have the work done haphazardly because we want to accommodate when it's better for us to be stable and move forward. I understand, or I heard, that one of some of council members' concerns was the fact that the PAB board wasn't particularly stable and they needed to get their act together. Now, we don't go by rumors and innuendos, and I don't know where it came from, not important. But the thing is, you want us to get our act together, put the actors in place so that the play can go on. Thank you.
I don't want to follow that. All right, so any other discussion on that?
Just again and again to the public, like, you hear one thing blasted all over the media that we're not doing this, not doing that. It's usually around election time. It's usually around a time when it serves people's interest. It doesn't serve your interest, and you have more power, I think, than we're using. And it's in your interest to call up your council members, to call up the mayor, call up people that you're dissatisfied with, and to do your part as a community-owned board. And we'll do our part, and the staff is doing their part. But this is happening in real time right in front of you, and it might not be reported in all the news media tomorrow the way that fun controversies are that people are stirring up to get votes. But this is where the real stuff happens, and the PABA is currently being disenfranchised and disempowered by council. Let's call it what it is. So the law is not being followed by your elected government, and as an accountability board, we're calling you to hold your elected officials accountable. It's as simple as that. Pick up a phone and help us out, and let's make this happen. It's one thing. I know there's a lot of things in our country that we feel like we're out of control with right now. So, you want to feel like we have some power. Let's work on this, because we really love to be serving you at our maximum capacity. And I think everything that Vice Chair Brown just said is powerful and true.
Any other discussion? All right, so we'll do that letter to council tomorrow. But yeah, we have to, the public needs it and we need it, and we need to help make this happen. All right, so next on our agenda, full business RPD record access, but Dwayne kind of went into good detail on that. I think we're gonna have some, I know we've done an ask of a little bit more detail on where they're at right now with what their proposal is to us, because there was a conversation back and forth, but nothing in writing, which, you know, was kind of what Dwayne, it was difficult for Dwayne to kind of go into a lot of detail when things are not written down, as opposed to how things are expressed to us across, you know, a phone or a table. But, you know, and this is something that, you know, the council has, you know, Council President Melendez has been in support of us on, and getting that direct access. We're going to do more direct follow-up with the mayor on that, and Corporation Council, to get what we need. That's, you know, expected underneath the charter. For new business, the one thing we had, this came up from a couple different members, and just we have to decide this tonight, but just figuring out that process for engaging the public in our meetings. Obviously, a lot of we're not, you know, in a room together as of yet, but you know, there are, no matter how we have these meetings, I think they always will be streaming. And you figure out the process if members of the public want to have questions at the end of a meeting, or as a public comment period at the beginning, or just figuring out what the best way to do that. I will say, you know, one thing that I think we want to kind of be cognizant of is, you know, before COVID and when public meetings were happening, somebody came to a meeting in person, there were a real person standing there and they asked a question, or there was a kind of follow-up. You know, if somebody has a, you know, anonymous question on Twitter or on YouTube that we don't know who they are, if they're a committee member, if they're a member of the city, if they're a resident of our community, but still that's a public person that has a concern, how do we figure out what do we take, what do we respond to, and what not? I know with Facebook, at least, there's a name attached to the face, so if there's comments that come through our Facebook live stream, at least we know there's a real person there that's asking the question. But I don't know if that's, and, you know, then Sarah, that's when we want to have the cutoff or not, but of where we take questions from, at least during our meetings, if we do that. And then also at what part, you know, I think either we read comments at the end, maybe that came throughout the meeting that Marina can read through, because she has access to those streams, where she can see the questions that come in from different places, or if we have a place at the beginning where people maybe ask a few questions, and then we figure out, you know, which ones are relative or to what we're asking about or talking about. But I want to get people's ideas or thoughts on, you know, what could be a productive way and accessible, but also in a way that's workable, considering our constrictions of streaming and wanting to have the meetings be of a considerate length for everybody engaged, of having, you know, the public take part somehow.
Chairperson Knox, when I first joined, that was something that we did, and the public was very respectful, put their concerns, questions in the chat, and we were able to keep things moving right along. And that was prior to Morena coming on, and she was not given all of the information, so she was not aware of how it worked. And I think that we definitely need to put forth a process as soon as possible. And once we put it out there, if it becomes cumbersome, then we can hone it down. Then there'll be ways to streamline it. But I would love very much to hear from the public while we're meeting, so they know we're listening to them, not just every now and then, but they have a chance to let their words be heard. Is this something we need to vote on, or does any other board member have a question or concern as to why we should not open it?
I think it'd be great to engage our public relations team with this, just because that is a staff department, and I'm sure they have great ideas. But just like we're going to kind of do a working group with Mr. Higgins and the policy department, it'd be great to do a working, maybe not as involved a thing, but I think I'd love to not have a conversation about that. Or we could have ideas, but I'd love to make sure that they're involved in it, just to respect that is their duties. But 100% agree, like it never hurts, and it always is great to hear feedback, especially since y'all can see stuff that we can't from sitting on Zoom or in a room. So yeah, but I'd love to engage our staff on that as well.
Well, thank you so much. However, what staff is doing as far as the community is a little different than what I'm suggesting. And so I would not want to involve staff and have a meeting and go through all of this. Let's just open it up and get it done.
I would say let's just agree that we're going to have a 5-minute session at the end of the meeting, and if anyone has questions, Larry can answer them.
That's it. As a big pie that just got thrown in my face, I think. Yeah, I will say, I mean, the point of when having it in the meeting, I don't think we want to necessarily have it after each part, because that would just, I think that would slow us down. But I think if we did it, yeah, oftentimes public comments at the beginning of meetings, but then people don't feel like they can actually affect the meeting that happened because they don't know what was going to be discussed. If people are able to ask questions or had concerns that were expressed after the meeting and we're still here after discussing those things, that could be a way. And then in that way, I think Marina having that access to those streams. Actually, Marina, can you explain a little bit just about the different streams you have access to? Because I remember you explained it to me. Don't get all technical, we lose people, but just because we stream in different ways, just how you can see depending where we're streaming the comments that come in, potential comments.
Yes, so we use a system that lets us stream to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube simultaneously. And it also lets me see comments that come in from those 3 places in real time. And that's pretty much it.
So let's say you get comments, also Facebook's comments are attached with the name, Twitter may or may not be, and YouTube can be anything pretty much. You just make up a username similar to Twitter. So how would you, what are your, speculating, I guess, because obviously it hasn't happened in real time yet with you, how would you delineate which comments are like, relatively important comments or substantive to what we're talking about? What's a troll and what's somebody that maybe has a question that doesn't fit, but it's a fair point that other people may learn from by us answering that question? Like, let's say you only get 5 questions, we can get them all, but if you get 50, what's that process, do you think, potentially for figuring out what gets asked and what makes it through?
Yes, so I can work with public affairs a little bit on this part, but I would basically use discretion to whittle down some of the bigger comments and find a question that is appropriate for a public meeting within that. I will not relay anything disrespectful, hate-related, or general trolling, but it would be as easy as just looking through and pulling out those comments. And the reason I would suggest some training on that specifically from public affairs is I know that they do media training for members of senior staff as well as board members. So it may be helpful in this situation as well.
Thanks, Marina.
And I did get a text from our lovely digital media manager who offered to help. So they are already on board, it seems.
Cool. Arlene, if you could help take the lead on just helping us figure that out between now and the next meeting.
Sure.
Yes, my vice chair.
Yes, thank you so very much. I think Marina and I can work together with the staff. It'll work out well, and I will get information back to you and the other board members this week.
Yeah, and also our ally, I mean, talking to the Alliance and other community allies just about, I mean, obviously they can just contact us as board members with concerns or thoughts all throughout, but if there's questions they want publicly asked, there might be a process that, we can just, as that public comment period, here's some, maybe similar to what Dr. Harrison was talking about correspondence, but there's questions that came in from this community group or this Alliance or other places that maybe have some common themes that we could kind of answer also. Sometimes it'll maybe just be things we get back to them that's not a public thing. It may be private, but something they want publicly answered that fits what we're doing. I think that might be an aspect of a way to do that also. So that'll be up to our allies and interested parties to figure out if they want to ask us those things that we could publicly answer, or that might help direct some of our work also in regards to policy and other things. But I do want to open that up as we move forward. All right. Any other matters for underneath new business or old business?
I move that we adjourn.
Second from, what was that, Dr. Seth?
Don't need to second the motion for adjournment.
We have to always second it every meeting in a row so you can tell us not to.
It's my little task.
All right, we are adjourned. If everybody votes
I
yes.
think we have to vote, though.
Yeah, if everybody votes yes, yep.
We have Knox,
Come
Settle,
on, Matthew.
Harrison, Brown, Nikoloff, and Tucker. How do you vote?
He's a yes in the chat.
Oh, wonderful. Then unanimous. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Michael and Dwayne and our
Thanks,
interpreter.
everybody.
Thank you.
All right, bye, everybody.
And congrats again to our new chair and vice chair.
Thank you.
Great meeting, very productive.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Try to enjoy the nice weather.
Night, folks.